Welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to helping the investment banking community grow through learning from successful leaders. So whether you're interested in learning about investment banking, an analyst or associate looking for advice on career progression and succeeding in the industry, or a senior or a VP that's passionate about leadership, you'll take something away from every episode. My name is Pete Nieberg, Global Head at Altrum, and my mission is to connect as many of you with successful investment banking leaders as possible. So thanks for joining me and enjoy today's episode. I'm pumped to introduce today's guest, Sher Hafeez, Managing Director at JLL in New York. Sher is a real estate M&A expert with over 17 years experience in the investment banking industry. He started his career back at Morgan Stanley as an analyst before moving to JPM, where he stayed for around 5 years, working his way up to VP level. After that, he's also spent time at Henschel & Company, HFF, before leading JLL's M&A and corporate advisory real estate business. Sher has advised on many successful transactions across the years and certainly understands what it takes to make a successful deal happen. He's passionate about sharing his knowledge with you all and helping you develop. So I'm really excited to have him on the show today. Outside of that, a great guy, and I'm sure we'll have some fun. So welcome to the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast, Sher, and thanks for joining me today.
Appreciate it, Peter. Good to be here.
Excellent. Well, why don't we just start with you introducing JLL to the audience and tell us a little bit about what you do for your clients.
Yeah, so just JLL is what we call it is the largest, or maybe one of the largest real estate intermediary in the world. We have about 63,000 employees globally, all do real estate in one shape or form, across 47 countries, 80 markets, and those 80 markets include 45 in the US alone. So we're a large intermediary that does everything. If there's a client that needs real estate services of any sort, we have a circle that just shows the evolution of a real estate deal or a real estate company or a real estate transaction, and we cover the entire circle. And within that, I'm in the capital markets group. We are the second largest in the world on that front as well. And investment banking was a relatively new add-on to the services that JLL provides. It was built via an acquisition that JLL essentially did a few years ago when they acquired our company, the company that I was one of the partners in. And four of us moved here to JLL. And over time, we've grown it to about 40 people now globally. So now we're a global investment bank, boutique advisory shop with offices in New York, California, and LA, Madrid, London, Singapore, and adding more. So we're having a lot of fun building a business. We're having a lot of fun serving our clients, and it's a lot of fun when a client calls you on something and you can just do it. You got to write the hardest part is find the right person somewhere in the world who's a phone call away to help the client. And it usually exists. I've never had anyone turned down because we can't do something for them.
Love that. And congrats again on the growth. I know, as you say, joining from HFF and as a partner and building the business with your colleagues and seeing rapid growth is great. So keep up the good work. I'm always interested speaking to leaders such as yourself with such good longevity in the industry. I'm intrigued to know, how did you end up in investment banking?
I was graduated with the 05, 06. At that time, all this kids that were smarter than me wanted to do investment banking. So I was like, I got to look into this. And, I didn't really have a path. I went for a few interviews and got in. And then the more I spent time on investment banking, the more I realized this was the skill set I needed. All the other kids that, and by the way, they're not kids anymore. They're adults with grown-up children now. They left. I stayed on. I've been in the business for, 17 years almost now. And the reason I stayed on was just the skill set very much suited me, We can get into the skill sets pretty soon, but, I enjoyed the advisory aspect of it. I enjoyed serving clients. I enjoyed the variety of different problems to solve, and I enjoy being an advisor to my clients. That's what keeps me going here. And, the compensation follows, but that's usually a byproduct, as you know, and not the end all be all.
Definitely. No, and I think again, obviously playing to your strengths is key for anyone who wants to succeed long term, right? So that definitely resonates with me. Before we get into the meat of today's discussion, talk to me or tell the listeners one thing, they can't find or they don't know about you, Cher, that they should know. Something
Yeah.
unknown or unexpected.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. These days, it's hard to say anything because, like, there's everything online or one way, shape, or form. So I'll try to go back in time.
Okay, go on.
So as a kid, between first grade and 12th grade, I changed about 7 schools.
Okay.
My dad was a diplomat, and we traveled a lot. And every year or every other year, I was in a different school, which was, nerve-wracking. I don't know how many people, but that was interesting, kind of making new friends and then finding new friends again. And every couple of years, maybe that's why I like investment banking because, you're moving on from one deal to the other and finding new clients. That sort of experience maybe helped me normalize new friends and understand the new environment and assimilate in the new environment, which I think was a skill set that I was forced to learn. And I think that's helped me in my career as I grew older.
Nice. Yeah, no, it must have been tough to go through that, but at the same time,
Yeah,
building skills that I'm sure you're using.
absolutely.
Let's jump into that actually, because speaking with a number of the leaders on the podcast, networking comes up again and again and again. So talk to me about your take on how important networking is for investment banking and success in the industry.
Yeah, I think networking has to be effective in some way, shape, or form. I think the agenda on both sides is something you both know what it is. You really dig into the situation, you offer some help, becomes your friend because that's eventually what happens, right? Like my best clients are the ones that are my best friends. We go on dinners together, we go on vacations together, our wives know each other, clients. That starts with the networking, but knowing the networking is not just grabbing coffee and kind of talking about your past and your experience. I think there's a understanding kind of the agenda and having some talking points on what that agenda is and understanding why they want to meet you in the first place and solving for it up front is what's helpful versus
Right.
just grabbing a bunch of coffee with no takeaways. You got to have takeaways out after every meeting if you can, otherwise it just goes nowhere. My view of networking is leaving an impression, right? Because that's what causes that networking event, whether it's coffee, lunch, dinner, to be effective. When somebody actually picks up the phone afterwards or replies to your email and says, you know what, that person left a good impression on me and I want to take the next step, whatever that may be. If there's a next step, there's an actionable step. That's usually helpful. And if you don't think that's going with this person, and would you mind recommending me to those? Because if you've made an impression and that person does it, you're branching off. And that's how you build your network, starting off in this industry. So don't take any coffee or meeting and lightly. I think it could always be helpful if you're prepared and have the agenda and have the takeaway that you want out of it. And if you don't get the takeaway you want out of it, kind of pivot to figure out something that kind of not makes it basically a waste of time for either party.
Yeah, it really resonates with me. I think you're right. Obviously the preparation is key, and then knowing what you want to get out of that situation. As you say, that what's the takeaway? What are you trying to achieve? And if you can't achieve that, then what can you? So I love that. That's great advice. And you talked about preparing, and obviously the power of LinkedIn as an example for that compared to maybe the more old fashioned ways. What are you looking to prepare exactly? Again, advice for those listening newer to the industry. What sort of things make good preparation for you?
Yeah, no, so in terms of new clients or new deals, it's not that dissimilar, right? It just takes a different sort of level of intensity to it. Clients are generally public. They're generally very open, very visible. So you're doing the basic work, right? To start it, right? You need to read their transcripts, and read their annual report, read some of their recent press releases, etc., to kind of come up with a story. But it's also important, when you're on the phone with them, not to just regurgitate what you learned. Hey, I saw you announced a 70 cents increase in your dividend. The guy or the CEO, the person, that is not the most important thing you did. But I think you just have to get the story of what they're about, what they have done, the big picture kind of, hey, you started 10 years ago and you've grown the company this much and seems like, your next evolution is XYZ. but I'm peppering that preparation that I've done in my conversations. In fact, I never mentioned that I read anything about that person. I bring it up as if it's my idea and say, you know what? I think the dividend increase that is a great idea, and a lot of my clients are doing it. Just knowing that he just did it, so he'll actually appreciate that because he obviously believes me. But I don't want to say that, hey, I saw your press release and I saw your and that great job, right? So I almost internalize what I learned in my mind, make a story of it, and then use the data points of that story through a very natural conversation. And that helps just being kind of natural in your flow. I think over preparing kind of hurts too. Like you don't need reams of data to kind of get there because then you're going to miss the big point. But the whole point of that research is, do you understand the story of this company, this client in a way where, you're kind of writing a narrative of it?
Thanks. And so thinking about deals, let's move into the deal area a little bit. Obviously involved in many successful deals over your time.
Yeah.
Having closed so many, what are the keys to successful deal making in your opinion?
I think a couple of things. I already mentioned one. I think that's important, understanding the dynamics, what the client is trying to achieve, right? Because you're paid to be successful. Success is not defined as one particular thing. Closing is the outcome of that success, but understanding what their dynamics are. So doing your prep work, listening to their needs. Once you get on the call and you're kind of in the situation, listen more first and talk after. I usually tend to be very on the quieter side early on in the conversation, kind of listen to everything and then kind of speak, because that's also very more effective, because I've actually taken all the data points from what happened in the call and be a little bit more effective than give my point up front, because they may be, misinformed in some way or shape. Then couple of other things. You got to be relentless in this business, right? Things are sometimes choppy, like, current markets obviously maybe are, right? And they may be for a while. You just have to be relentless, kind of don't give up on situations, be creative, like find out other ways. Like if it's not going, plan A is not going, always think about what plan B, C, and D is. In fact, always have a plan B. And if you're moving towards plan B, then have a plan C. So being relentless and being there for your client is helpful. And then being creative. I mean, the investment banking, other than some other businesses, you have the leeway to be a little bit more creative. And these are like by creative, I'm not talking about, kind of creative, the best looking book you can do for a client on a marketing effort, that helps. But being creative, like, if you're trying to do a specific deal, is there a way to make that story pop? And I'll give you an example of that because that's maybe interesting. Is we had a big client. We were doing about a $2 billion recap of an industrial portfolio that was in a sector that nobody had really kind of invested in a big way. So it was going to be a tough ask. It's a lot of dollars to be raised on an asset class that is not proven. I have the benefit of sitting at JLL. We have 250 people across the world that do a lot of research, 50 in US. And I said, listen, it'll be helpful to just do some real deep down research on this asset class, because we manage it. We sell this every day at the ground level, and we lease a lot of this stuff to our leasing brokers. Maybe there's a lot of data that we can show something that's interesting. And we started gathering the data, and then the data led to charts. The charts prove that this asset class actually under the table has been doing really, really well behind the scenes and better than some other asset classes. And we put a white paper on it. We released it publicly across different media channels. And then that started getting picked up. And then my name was on the back of the cover of it. And we started getting inbound and said, this is an interesting piece. I never knew about it. What are the opportunity sets in this space? And I was like, oh, it's not funny you mentioned. I have an excellent opportunity in this space with a client of mine that you should look at. And eventually we got a large Middle Eastern sovereign wealth fund to come in to invest with that. So that was like, I could have just taken it out, made some calls, and made some, hey, maybe we would have been successful. But I think that initial work to make an independent review of that asset class and deep down review helped get that asset class on the map with a number of folks.
Amazing. Yeah. Thanks for sharing the example. It's so much easier to connect with. And so what I heard was listening to the client, getting the dynamics, listening to the needs, making sure listening is key. An old mentor told me I have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. And that's kind of stood me in good stead, I think, over the years. Be relentless and be creative. And again, speaking to a lot of the leaders in the space, given the market and when you see challenges in the market, being able to adapt and be creative is key. So again, thanks for sharing that example. For someone new again to investment banking, more in the support role of the deals, not obviously on the client side, but more on the support roles as they are. What are you looking from them to ensure the success of the deal?
Yeah, I think the most important aspect of this job from a junior support role perspective is just the willingness to put the extra mile. I can't teach you to be motivated to do this job well. I think a lot of people can do this job okay, right? And you can get by, you can get a couple promotions, and then, there's a reason why everything has a pyramid in these structures, because if everybody was a flat line, then then everybody would be kind of mediocre and get up the ranks. The reason it does that is, it kind of forces people to take the extra mile. So if you're genuinely interested in it, you have to go the extra mile. What does that mean? My style is usually, I don't grind, right? So I give them what I need as something that I would have. And if that's what they can do, that's perfect. Somebody who takes that extra mile is the one that in my books gets, the A+. So I give them components to do B+, A- work. If they do more than that, that's A-. If they do less than that, that's C, right? So I'm always solving for a B+, knowing that most people wouldn't want to do it, and I don't want to force people to do it. In fact, it's not appropriate to force people to try to be A's, because not everybody is going to be A. But I'm looking for that A, and the A is the guy who spends their extra mile, and not, you're not always going to have an A+. Like, I have meetings where I'm not prepared fully the way I want it to be. That's fine. You're never going to have perfection every time. In fact, that's also leads to challenges, like if you try for perfection, because you're going to miss the big picture. But number one key is, being very focused on taking that extra step, and that leads to better things. So that's the number one key.
And you say willingness to go that extra mile. What other key qualities do you look for those analysts and associates coming through that are then going to be the future leaders? What are you looking from them?
Yeah, I think, it starts with being technically very strong, which most people in the business who get in the door are, mathematically and analytically, they have to be strong. They have to be, but more importantly, they have to be organized. Our job is not to kind of create the most difficult to understand, very intricate set of analysis. Our job is to make the intricate in a client's mind who doesn't spend all day thinking about corporate finance and these aspects of an M&A deal and what's happening, but to take whatever is there and simplify. That's the more effective tool. So if you're not organized around your thoughts and around how you put it together, and if you see an Excel file that you can't, kind of manipulate and easily understand, or you see a PowerPoint that's not well formatted, there's a reason for that. It just shows your organizational skills, right? And it comes with time. There's a level of rigor in investment banking. I went through it. Everybody goes through it. That just makes you better. But the key ingredient is being organized, because the other stuff you're expected to have when you walk in the door of day one, right? Analytical skills, smarts, IQ, all that stuff you're expected. The guy who's organized, which is hard to kind of decipher from interviews, is another very important trick or trait.
Love that. Thanks for sharing. I'm sure that will resonate with the listeners. Being organized, you said, I think it sounds like experience going through it and doing the Excels and the PowerPoints and acquiring that the nuances required to be organized. Are there other things you recommend that analysts and associates do to help improve their organization skills?
I think the thing about this business is you only get better with reps. You just see situations, you get involved in situations where you need to be, not organized, but learn the tricks of the trade. And this is very much an apprenticeship-based business. So for the young guys, I'd say, like, find your mentor, learn from them, and do a lot of different types of deals if you can, and different types of situations. and try to see what the guys above you are doing, because, they've already gone through what you've gone through. So one thing you should always think about is always learn from the guy above you, right? Like, you may think that they're not doing a great job, or, you may have your view, but they got there before you, and they were in your shoes in most cases. And learning from them is going to be important. So just having your right mentors over your career is going to be helpful, because they will teach you a lot of different things. You can't teach organization, but you can teach how to slowly get your habits to kind of be trained, so you're better at doing small things, and they all add up to become really, really big, effective changes in your, just work product.
Nice. So really, doing the reps, putting the energy in, learning and finding a mentor that could help you as well and help you improve quicker. Let's talk a bit about mentorship then. I hear many different examples throughout the industry, speaking to different leaders. What do you do at JLL to foster that mentorship relationship for analysts, associates and VPs?
Sure. Yeah. So we have an official program, where we pair people with their mentors, which is helpful, a part of it. And we have a rotation program where people move from different places to learn from different other, senior members of the various divisions that we have. But I think a lot of this happens also informally, because, you're not forced a mentor, you choose a mentor, and you choose a mentee. So sometimes it happens. It's great to be disciplined about a mentor or mentee. I think you got to find it, and it doesn't have to be within the firm. Maybe sometimes it's even better to be outside the firm, because you can get that perspective. Over my career, I've had mentors at different stages, and, some of them were inside the firm, but most cases they were outside, because they also gave me the outsider's perspective versus having an agenda, right? Like, you're always conflicted when your mentor is somebody who's your boss, and you're thinking about certain things about your career, and, hey, Joe, should I go to MBA? And, I might be thinking, well, damn, like, if he goes to MBA, then, what am I going to do? Like, I need that guy. So maybe I won't be as forthright with somebody who I don't have a lot of skin in the game, other than, like, I want to be helpful to that person. So just have a diversity of mentors, get multiple opinions. Obviously, inside the firm is good, but I think the mentor-mentee relationship has to be something that you choose and is not forced on you, even though a lot of organizations would do it, including us, to keep us organized. But I think it's on the person who wants to be mentored to find the right person that they fit with.
Yeah, good advice again. And when you said mentors outside, is it still in finance or in different industries?
I think it could be different industries. It depends on what drives you, right? Your finance mentor could be helpful on just giving you advice on that. But I think somebody who's just gone through the years and is in a different industry or changed careers, that's helpful, right? Well, how was their experience? If all your friends and mentors were in finance, you also lose the perspective of the bigger picture of how the world works, right? How the media world works, what are they doing, how the marketing works, and how does IT work, and what do they do? Like, your life and your career is not static, it evolves. And the more you know about other careers, the better you become and more well-rounded you become in kind of understanding some other aspects of your business that you may be running at some point, even if you wanted to be outside of banking and take a senior position at some other investment bank or a client of yours. So just having people with different backgrounds and different careers is actually helpful as well.
Nice. Okay, thanks. It's shared with me by a couple of leaders recently on the podcast again that they saw one of the toughest transitions for investment bankers being from that analyst to associate role.
Sure.
And the added management required. Do you agree with this?
I think so. I think it's tough. I think every promotion is tough. The analyst to associate is when you really grow up. There's a reason why between analyst to associate, a lot of people go to business school because they want to grow up, and that gives you the sort of the tools to really kind of round yourself out, because you went to college, you studied and partied, and suddenly then you got into a job, you're working 80 hours a day. You didn't really know what was happening on the deal. All you did was just things that were flown down to you from 3 or 4 different other, other positions down. You kind of at the totem pole. And suddenly, as an associate, you now need to be in charge of the deal. In fact, associates take a lot more sometimes than the other guys above them, because they're young, they're usually not married, they have time, they understand the analytics, and they also are hungry, and they're supposed to be the managers now. So I think it is a pretty tough transition, and that's where you lose a lot of people, because they just realize that it's so hard to do that job. I think one thing I say, and I always say to my analysts or even associates, if you really want to be an associate, you should start acting like one before you get the job. Otherwise, you won't be prepared. It's hard to do. You're trying to become a third-year analyst, and we want to be an associate. The last few months, you should actually act like you're one. Even if you think, I'm going to start on January 1st as an associate, you're not going to wake up suddenly and say, like, I'm an associate, now I'm going to act differently. Behaviors change slowly and over time, and you have to train yourself to change your behaviors and your, kind of habits over a longer period of time to be sustained.
Nice. Yeah. I heard that from another leader recently as well, about act the position before you get it. That's the easiest way to transition. You obviously mentioned business school there and acquiring skills through an educational. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that you recommend analysts do to be able to make that transition to associate easier?
It essentially comes down to knowing if you wanted that position. And again, going back to the point of the mentor, right? Having the mentor and learning from what they did, right? You can't suddenly gain experience, but you can benefit from that person's experience by talking to them and how they transition. So having a game plan of what they did. If you're looking at somebody who kind of did that because you were first year and they were third year and they transitioned and you liked it, how they approached it, obviously you have that. But if you don't have that, then talking to the guys that went through it is very important, right? Communicating that desire is important, and then understanding kind of the steps you take to get there is important. Now, like, I'm being generic because, like, it depends on the situation. Like, I was at large bulge brackets like Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. I've been at 4-person boutique shops. Now I'm at a 40-person boutique, which is global, but we're part of 63,000 person shop. So, like, it's kind of a tweener. So every situation is different. Sometimes you feel like, I don't have the opportunity to learn. It's very competitive. The third year is, the associates aren't really helping me. That's fine. But then you have to sort of kind of go outside of it and then learn it from someone else. Like, it will happen if you kind of put the hours and have a game plan. Good things happen when you game plan for something.
Sure.
And if you're methodical about tackling it. Write down your plan. Like, what are you going to do differently? Like, I write down a lot of things just because it keeps me focused. Write it down. I think writing it down helps. Like, if you have a plan, how do I get to an associate? These are the things I will do differently. And see if you're doing those. You don't have to take it every day, but just generally see if you're doing those things every day that an associate should have been doing in your third year.
And would you say that typically those above you were open to helping you with that plan, sharing that plan with those above you and getting advice? I'm guessing that's something you'd recommend as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think if you trust them, you should definitely do that. And there's no reason not to trust people, but I know, sometimes there's competitive elements to it, and you can't just trust everybody. But take advice from people that you think are somebody who are willing to help you.
So what I'm really interested to know now is really focus a little bit on the VP. The VPs are the next ones to make that step to managing director. So what advice do you have for them, again, to take that step and make the transition successful?
Yeah. And I think to a certain extent that's tougher because analyst to associate, you're still analytical, you're more manager. From VP to MD, you are really going outside and becoming a representative of the firm. And you're expected to eventually bring in revenue and have someone pay you and your firm revenue to provide services, which is a daunting ask. I mean, it's a tough transition because now you have to sell the company and the firm, be good enough and compete with dozens of other investment banks in certain situations to win the business, get their trust, and then execute too, because ultimately MD is the person who's on the line of fire, at least in my opinion, right? If I have to kind of go down and blame the VP and down, that's unfair because it's the buck stops with me. It's if I didn't catch it, or it was big enough and I didn't catch it, it's on me. So that transition is harder in certain ways. And I think the way the industry works is the VP to MD transition is taken as purely a very much a mentorship approach. You obviously have proven that you can do the job. You've obviously proven that you're a good manager. You obviously proven that you can execute, right? Because if you're a VP and you're up for promotion and you're being considered for promotion, you have all the ingredients on the execution side and the confidence to be able to lead a transaction. The biggest difference is you have to be able to lead the transactions, but also be able to be a good marketer and good at presenting, or better at presenting, because you need to have the skills and go sit in front of the CEO and present a whole pitch, sometimes alone, sometimes with a number of people. So that skill, at least from my experience, when I became a VP, or when I was at Henschel & Co. and I was hired as a VP, I had a game plan of starting to develop my own clients, not by just calling out, because that's hard to do, right? Like I don't have the experience to be able to do. But when we were executing deals, I was making sure that I kept in touch with the people that were involved with me at the execution level at those firms. And we were exchanging notes. I was helping them, giving them research, asking for things. What happened was, as I became from VP to MD in 2-3 years, they went from, junior, kind of, accounting person to C-suite level. And because of that the interaction we've had, it was very natural for us to become, kind of do business together. So that was an important way, where it was a low hanging fruit, is like, don't think that, you have to wait till the MD to have clients. I called them my clients, even though they weren't going to raise any revenue. My first deal was something like that I ever did. I was, kind of actually was about to be promoted, maybe last year VP. And, one of the deals that I did was somewhat similar to that, where, it just happened. So that made it easier because I could execute, and also source, transactions. So the key difference is you got to start building your own roster of clients at the VP level. And it doesn't have to be going out to play golf with the CEOs, because they probably wouldn't. Just to be very frank and honest, time's money for them, but it's the guys underneath them that are moving up the ladder, right?
Smart.
So those are the guys you're going to spend a lot of time with.
So that's it's a longer term play. You're investing in that relationship now, knowing that they're going to be the future leaders that are going to help you to be successful in that
Correct.
MD role. Love it.
Correct.
Great.
It's a long,
great advice.
you're analyst for 2-3 years. You're an associate for 2-3 years. You're a VP for 2-3 years. You're an MD for 20-30 years. So you're going to spend almost your entire career, more than half of your career, being an MD, right? So to get to that place isn't something that you should just, kind of jump into. It just happens. But once you're there, it becomes natural. So you're going to spend any successful investment banker is going to spend most of their career in the MD plus place, right?
Sure.
But natural.
Okay. The investment banking industry, as we know, is ever changing. It's never one thing. And I think we've come out of really highs post-COVID to where we are now, recording this in May, with the market a lot tougher. For those more junior in the industry, what advice would you give to them to be successful in the ever-changing environment they're gonna experience?
Mm-hmm. So I've been in the business a long time. A lot's changed. The way, the way all-nighters, back when I was a analyst, all-nighter was a badge of honor. Now they're frowned upon, and rightly so. Like, I almost think, like, if you had to pull an all-nighter, somebody was not efficient with the system, or didn't push back on an unreasonable request from a client that required some guy to not sleep. shouldn't happen anymore, right? And doesn't happen as often as it used to. But we were, 2 days of all-nighters, we were like, oh, badge of honor, like that's great. So the industry is changing quite a bit for the better in general. I think it's very important to go with the flow of the times, right? I think I've still seen friends who are still in the business go back to the old ways, right? Like they're not evolving. I think if you don't evolve, you die, and become irrelevant. So evolving with the times is important. Like just the way the things used to be done back in the day is not the way it happens today. Like, people weren't even using Excel in the 1980s to do work. Can you even think about an analyst not doing Excel work, or even me? So I think evolving with the times is important in an ever-changing. And then, that includes everything, right? Like you should know where the trends are. You should know where the industry is going, not culturally, but also sort of from a market perspective. And that will actually lead you to be very, I guess more of a successful investment banker, right? And that's a generic statement, but I really believe every aspect of your work, you need to evaluate it, whether you're doing it better. I mean, we're building a business here. Understanding the trends and staying ahead of them is important.
Okay, excellent. And keeping an eye on those trends, I think, is going to be key, of course, for all looking to grow long term. Yeah. Let's talk a bit more about investment banking culture. You mentioned the demands, the all-nighters changing, the mindset around that. And I certainly remember back in 2010, it was a lot different to how it is now. And COVID's obviously sped that up. What else do you feel has changed within IBD culture over the years?
Like I said, all the smart kids in school wanted to do investment banking, no longer, right? There's a lot of great other career pursuits. If not, they'll want to go do their own thing, which is also great, right? There's more entrepreneurial bent in this world than it used to be when I started, right? It was IB or bust, or consulting or bust. You have great positions in tech firms. You can start your own startup with a few friends, one with a tech background, one with marketing background, one with your finance background, and a few years later you're a billionaire, or at least that's the dream, right? So there's definitely choices today for the right folks. So then the career choice of banking, unlike mine, which was, hey, since everybody's doing it, let me find out what's happening. And I was lucky that this was actually supposed to be the right skill set for me, or the right job for me, or the right career for me, given my skill set. But it doesn't have to be for everybody. So given those choices, it gives you the ability to kind of choose banking in comparison to other sectors in your college career, which is helpful. We didn't have that level of choices that were as compelling as investment banking. That's a pretty big change in the industry, where for hiring and retaining top talent, we have to provide the right amount of compensation, the right amount of environment, and the right amount of experience for them to actually want to be here. They're all here because they want to be here, versus this is the only thing that's worth doing and I have to do it because everybody else did it, right? That's never a good sign for anybody, like if they're doing it because they have to. So that's a healthy change in the industry, where people who are moving up the ladder and doing it are doing it because they have choices and they still decided to do banking.
Excellent. And on the flip side, what's the one part of IBD culture or IB culture that you'd most like to see change still?
I'd still like to change somewhat of the same, it hasn't fully changed yet, right? I think it still has that additional rigor of, hey, this is banking, and you do the extra hours, and maybe you're not doing all-nighters, but you're working 70-80 hours a week, and that's great. I think what I would like to do is just think more about, are we being efficient with the resource we have? Saying no to clients for being unreasonable on their demands is something I would still want to do. I mean, clients come first, and that's important, but we're advising them, and if they're asking for something unreasonable, we should advise them not to ask for that. I think some of that is still not changed, at least from my perspective, and that will happen over time, and I think it's in the right direction, but we're not fully there yet.
And is that the role of a leader? Is that the role
Absolutely.
you see you should be playing for the team?
Absolutely. I have to make a decision on whether I need to spend resources, my time and my resources, my team's resources to, take something on, which I think is not the best use of our time. And, you do it because you can hand it off or something of that nature. That's never a good strategy. If I can't take the leadership role in that particular assignment and I'm not excited about it, we're never going to have good execution, and we're only as good as our last execution, unfortunately. So that reputation will carry with you for a while if you screw something up because you weren't paying attention and you handed it off to someone who wasn't equipped to do it. So that's important. As a leader, I have to take on anything that I will personally have time and energy and willingness to spend time on.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And again, we talked a bit about the pieces that make analysts and associates and VPs successful. And you also mentioned that you're still involved in the recruitment process. So let's talk a little bit about the cultural piece. So for those coming in to interview, what's the one quality that you're really looking for? What's the characteristics you're looking for as well?
The various positions, especially here where we've grown it quite a bit. We've hired maybe 50, 60 people at the junior level. That means that we've looked at maybe 500, 600 people over this time. So I think what has resonated with me when I'm looking for a position is your thought process. Do you understand the dynamics that were in play? What changed? How did it change? Our business is first problem solving business, right? There's usually a problem, right? Like, somebody wants to raise a capital, wants to merge the company. I guess I won't call it problem, but there's usually a need for us to do something. Otherwise, we're not doing it. Unlike corporate finance jobs where you're doing things on a repetitive basis and you need to be really good at, Excel and modeling so you can build a corporate model and keep it updated and all those things. We are hired to advise on situations. So my first question and my only biggest question is, walk me through the situation and what was different about it and what did you do and how did you add value? That usually, if somebody has a good grasp of that, that usually kind of sticks with me more than any other aspect of the interview.
In terms of recognition is a big part for businesses more and more these days. How do you recognize success in your team?
The most important thing is for me to see that transition, that you're growing. Personal growth is important. Professional growth is important. I don't want to see just having relationships, starting families, right? Like growing up. I mean, I know I was an analyst. I used to party a lot, go out till 3 a.m, come back to work at 8. That's great. I could handle it, but it'll be a little weird if I do that today, right? And sure, have to work like that. Personally, I won't be able to function, but that would not be part of what I call personal growth, right? Like, there's a time and age for everything, and I had my time in my 20s, and now it's my time to be a family man too. So I want to see personal growth and professional growth because they go hand in hand. Like, if you're struggling at home, you're going to struggle at work because you're not balancing your life in an equilibrium that it needs to be for you to be successful in life in general. I want to see more maturity as you're growing up, right? I want to see the confidence in you as you're growing up. Take more of the onus. I don't expect the first year analyst to say, listen, like, let me lead the call on this GD. But I expect the second, third year analyst to pick up. So I think it's the most important thing is to success. I want to see sort of the steps being taken, baby steps, as you're growing older and maturing in your career, that you are progressing. And it's not necessarily professional growth. I want to see the personal growth too, because I think my personal philosophy is if you have those two in equilibrium, you'll be successful and you'll do well in both sides of the equation. But you can't just spend too much time on one side and neglect the other side because it'll catch up to you.
Thanks for the insight. And again, when you see someone that's growing well personally as well as professionally, how do you recognize that success with them? What types of things do you do to let them know that it's recognized?
Oh, I mean, there's unofficial. I mean, we do obviously the year-end review where we'll give them the full review, but I don't think people need to wait a year to give compliments and or encouragements. It doesn't need to be formal. It just hey, I noticed this that you did a great job on that call. Oh, great job, like congrats on certain things that they did. Oh, you did a fantastic job running this deal. You should put that on your LinkedIn profile and mention yourself, because that'll be pretty cool for your growth. You should go talk to the client about this deal and the case study, because you really led this, VP. I think it comes every day. It comes with, because you're making small steps. You can't just wait for all it to accumulate and vomit it out, because then it'll lose its appeal, because, it happened so far back. You want to kind of give the gratification when you see it, and give it on a regular basis. And that also increases morale, and also increases their willingness to kind of keep learning, because, people react better to nothing more than being recognized. In various studies have shown that, right? At work, compensation is number 2. Recognition is usually number 1. So if they are doing a good job, why not do the thing that people care about the most, even more than compensation?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, Altrum obviously being a recognition business and having a recognition
Absolutely.
product. So I really agree with you on that. And I think recognizing people in the moment, spontaneously, and calling back the success that they've had is so important for that. So
Correct.
Thanks for sharing. And you obviously mentioned having the equilibrium between work and family. And we already touched earlier on in today's episode about, balance, the demands of the work. What type of things do you do outside of work? And what are your recommendations for getting that side in balance?
Spending time with the family is key. They keep you going. They keep you motivated. If you have kids, they'll obviously be a good reason for keeping going. That's important. Having good hobbies is important, right? Keeps you out of trouble. And, kind of gives you more things to do. And those don't have to be limited to anything. You could be, want to read books at night, or even play video games, and you want to be a great gamer, go at it, right? Like, it doesn't matter what your interest levels are, just have interests outside of work,
Nice.
and pursue them more, right? Like, personally, I play a lot of cricket. I used to play a lot more. Now I'm starting to play more. I read a lot, I run, somewhat, not as much as I should. Right. So I have lots of different things. And then I spend a lot of time with family when I'm, whenever I can. Extended family. So those are the things that, almost keep you motivated too, and keep the balance, right? You got to take the time off and move away from the work environment for a bit every often, right? To be able to then appreciate the work too. I miss coming back to work and the clients when I'm off for 7 days, but I try to really take off 7 days unless it's absolutely urgent, because I owe it to the family to be able to spend time and be present when I am. So be present where you are if you can. Try not to look at cell phones too much, because that, people notice that. And usually that means that you don't care to be there, even in a personal, professional setting. Don't look at your phone when you're talking to a client in a meeting, because that basically hints that you'd rather be somewhere else.
Please don't even have it on the desk. It drives me mad. Don't have it
No.
on the desk if you're getting into a meeting.
Yeah.
But yeah, good advice. I think sometimes setting those boundaries for the personal life in a demanding business is tough, especially for those newer to the industry. So thanks for sharing your thoughts. I was interested to know a bit about your growth and development as a leader. We touched on mentors. We touched on networking. What else has helped you grow and develop as a successful MD, do you think?
I think we've talked about a lot of those things. Kind of just the most important thing is personal inventory, right? Like, knowing where you're headed and what you need to do to get there, right? It starts there. That's the key. And then you have to execute, right? We're also in the execution business. So you have to have a plan. Think of this as your own mandate, and you're your own client. How would you do it, right? You come up with a plan. And this one is easier because you already won the mandate. You're the only one. So you're not competing with anyone else. But once you have it, having a game plan of where you want to be, right? Like, usually if it's an M&A deal, right? Hey, we got to close it. Okay. That's maybe 9 months away. What happens in between, right? So those are steps. You almost, all the people on this, on the podcast will know this, but there are steps. You build a timeline, month 1, month 2, month 3, month 4, month 9. These are the things that will happen. Mentally or written, do the same thing on your yearly progress in general of where you want to be. And that starts with what do you want to be on month 9? So promotion year, hey, I want to get promoted. Okay, what am I going to do in these, next few quarters to get there? What are my goals for these next few quarters? Yes, I want to try to have meet at least 5 or 6 of my clients or, soon to be clients, senior members. I want to go see them for coffee. Okay, check that in. I want to try to execute a full deal this year on my own. Okay, check that in. So you have your checks and you try to check those in, and that will eventually, month 12, those will get noticed and you get promoted. So knowing what you want to get to first and then having a game plan to execute is how you eventually do it. So not that dissimilar from the job you're already doing.
Yes. Again, thanks for that. So one question I had in mind was, if you could go back now, let's take you back to Sher, first day at Morgan Stanley, knowing what you know now, what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself?
Don't stress too much. I stressed a lot when I was a analyst. Hey, what would people think? Am I doing a good job? Why are they liking everything I'm doing? If they said go do it, I'd not, I'd get nervous about it. Ask more questions. You get the free pass. You always get a pass. Nobody says don't ask me questions. And if they do, then, you stay away from them. Ask questions because everybody has a free pass, especially at the junior level. You have to ask questions and keep asking, hey, I want to know how to do this. I just want to be clear. I didn't ask enough questions, I feel like, because I was, kind of raised in Pakistan, and we're generally less bold about asking questions, and our personalities are a little timid than here. So that was something that didn't come naturally to me, and investment banking is very filled with alpha personalities. So you gotta fit in a little bit. So that was another thing. And then related to that, be a little bit bolder, kind of show, make eye contact. Those little things that you learn in college, you learn over time, are as important as doing a good job. I was always technically very strong. I could do a good job, but I think where I left some performance to be desired early on, and I could go back and redo it, I would do those things better. Who knows what would have happened,
Well, I think it's great. And those points about being bold and asking questions, I think there may be listeners out there struggling with that given the COVID period and stuff. So I think it's a great piece of advice and recommendation. Yeah. I can't believe that we're reaching the end of the show. We literally just got a couple of minutes left. For those listening, who want to get more of you, Sher, how do they best connect with you?
Email, share my emails. That's the best way. And then, we'll love to connect and, find time.
Perfect. I'll definitely make sure we include your email in the show notes as well then. And I'm a strong believer that successful leaders are readers, not necessarily books these days. There's tons of other resources out there. Is there something you recommend that's had a big impact on you?
Yeah. No, I read. I'm more of a nonfiction person. I watch TV, which is more fiction, and I read books, which is nonfiction. So sort of I balance it out. Couple of genres, I love history books. So, history teaches you a lot about, how things happen. And usually not finance history. It's usually, war history. It's going back in time, reading about the start of the universe. It's all kinds of history. I just love anything that has history tied to it. I'm attracted to it. Biographies I like because, you kind of take elements from people. I loved Buffett's one. I read Clinton's. I've read most of the president's ones, and people who are successful because you learn how they do things in a certain way, whether you agree with them politically or not, or their viewpoints. I think just knowing where they came from is important, and having that viewpoint of, or having that kind of unbiased view of this person actually did something cool and important, and how they got there is maybe helpful to me, even if I don't believe in what they stand for. But then, on the nonfiction side, I love books that have some sort of a message to it, or at least the end of it. Like I love the book Fooled by Randomness, reading about it, just it could be depressing, but it basically says like a lot of success is random in nature. So don't get on your high horse because you got everything and you did all the right things. You probably are beneficiary of the randomness of the universe, and you got it because you were in the right place at the right time, and nothing more. I like that very extreme view of the world, and kind of keeps you a little bit more honest. Like, you're, maybe it is true, but I also believe in like, you have to make your own luck. So, as much as I kind of believe that it may be random, that, things happen to you, by chance, and serendipity plays a big part in life. It also happens to people who, the good things happen to people who actually work for it too, not in the way that they thought it would happen sometimes, but it does happen. So nature has its way and universe has a game plan, it seems. So, a lot of different types of things, but reading is good because it opens your mind and it also improves your vocabulary in work settings. So there's a double benefit of reading.
Nice. Well, I'll definitely grab some of those titles off you and pop them in the show notes for those that are interested. I haven't heard of that randomness book you mentioned, but it's sounds interesting. And I'm a big believer of making your own luck, but I'm definitely intrigued. Hey, I've really enjoyed our conversation, Sher. So thanks so much for your time today. I appreciate how busy your schedule is at the moment with everything happening on the transaction side. So thanks so much for sharing it with us. I'm excited to listen back. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of insights, I should say, not insults, insights for us and for the listeners. Perfect. And we'll take a lot away. So thanks so much, and best of luck for those transactions in Q2 as always.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining me today for the Investment Banking Leaders Podcast. Today's episode was brought to you by Altrum, the global leaders in commemorating your most important transactions with a meaningful deal toy. So if you have a successful deal to celebrate, hit me up or the Altrum team at altrum.com to get your design started. I had a great time chatting with Sher, listening to his experiences, and he shared some great insight with us all. I particularly loved his views on career progression. He shared how sitting down and making a detailed plan with the steps required to get you to the next level was key. He said, share it with your mentor and act like you're in the role you want to be before you have it. I love that mindset. He also shared a ton of great tips on how to be a top networker and ensure you achieve success in the industry. He had insights on how to prepare an agenda for every networking situation, ensuring you're clear on what your aim is and what you want your key takeaway to be. He said, as well as that, always looking for recommendations and referrals to others from those in your network helps you build a bigger and stronger network, which equals more success. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I'm sure you have a ton of your own takeaways too. Join me again for another discussion with a successful in-banking leader. Until then, you can find us where all great podcasts live. So follow our podcast page, and best of luck with your transactions.